Hi guys, I'm Jim and this is J&R Woodworking with a little bit of Jim's Fix-It Shop again. I finished up this bandsaw, and if I move a little bit, you can tell that I've added a extension table on it. Now my saw, when I got it, came with the fence and the fence rails, which stuck out about 19 inches past the table. So with these things just sticking out in the air, I figured I might as well put a table on here so I can use it. Now these old saws are real hard to get parts for them. So if you have a setup like this and you're gonna extend your table, that's a lot of stress on the trunnions underneath the table, and you don't want to break one of them. So if you look around my shop, I have a lot of oversized tables on my equipment, and what I use for legs going from the table to the floor is just a piece of conduit. Let me steal one off my radio arm saw and I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's just a piece of conduit, 1/2 inch. I cut to the length I need and make it a little short. At work on the lathe, I turn up a piece of steel that I can pound in the end of the piece of conduit, and I drill and tap that. And then I've got a bunch of these little knobs that were rejects from a company that makes them, and they just gave me a box of them. I stick them in the lathe and I flatten the bottom off. Then you take this and I just take a piece of wood and I drill a 3/4 inch hole in it, screw it to the bottom of the table, and I stick this in the hole. And then to tighten it up, you just unscrew this little knob until it's tight. Very simple, almost costs nothing to make, and it works extremely well. So what I did on this, let me see if I can drop you down a little bit. Okay, you can see on the bottom side of the table, let me wiggle you a little closer. I just took a piece of 2x4, drilled my 3/4 inch hole in it, screwed it and glued it to the bottom of the plywood table. Now to get the angles how I wanted, I just used my 4-foot level. I put it on the bottom of the saw and on the edge of the extension table, and I used an angle gauge and I picked up this angle to cut the 2x4s. Pretty simple. The bottom one, well, let me wiggle you over there. Okay, the bottom one is a piece of hard maple. I cut the angles the same way, using the level and an angle gauge. I drove in a T-nut into it, and I took a bolt and screwed into the T-nut, and it goes up inside this plug that I pounded in the end of the conduit, and I can tighten that to get this as tight as I want it. Okay, now we're on the back side of the bandsaw, and the big issue I had with this was the way this tightens the blade. As you turn this handle, it pulls this assembly up, and what happens is the bottom of this threaded rod just rests inside of this frame, and it kind of acts like I don't know if you've ever tried to drill a piece of steel without making a center punch, but as the drill's rotating, it'll actually walk across the metal. Well, that's what this started doing when I tried to tighten it tight enough to make the blade work properly. And as this screw was walking around in here, it actually bent it. So I had to try to get it out, straighten it, and then I made this little cup right here. Now if I crank this all the way up, I might be able to get this cup out of here and show you what it is. It's just it's a small cup. It's 3/4 inch diameter. The hole I bored on the inside is 560 thousandths, and it's a 1/4 inch deep. This whole thing is a 1/2 inch tall, and it has a 1/4 inch diameter pin, a 1/2 inch long on the bottom of it. So what I did is I screwed this, after I straightened it, I put this rod down on the frame, and I marked the frame right under the rod, and I drilled a 1/4 inch hole in the frame that pin drops into. Then I went down and bought these thrust bearings. This is the bottom washer. I just dropped that into the cup, and this is the actual bearing. Now that's, if you've ever worked with bearings, that's about the cutest thing I think I've ever found, and it works extremely well. Now the washer that goes on top of this bearing, I'll get this out of here, looks, I dropped that, I had to pick it up. Looks just like this one. It's got a regular hole in it, just like a washer, which works out pretty good because the end of that threaded rod, they have that ground into a ball, and it fits right in that washer. And if you notice, it's actually stuck on the end of the rod. Now if I can get this back in here without dropping that. I really like how that came out. It turns so much easier. You can't even tell you're actually getting any spring pressure by the way this handle turns. We're going to crank this up, and we're going to try and cut a log and see what it does. Okay, I've seen a lot of guys have these big elaborate fixtures for cutting their logs or ripping wood, and I just never felt I needed anything that elaborate. All I use is, I've got a piece of plywood, I've got 4 T-nuts in the bottom for adjustments, and a piece of oak, I think, and a couple big hand screws, or thumb screws, I guess, whatever you want to call them. I just take a couple pieces of 2x4 and cut a V in it, and that's all I've ever used. I just dropped a hunk of wood in there, slide it up on the plywood. Now you know, if you have this front edge of the plywood right against the saw blade and the back edge is up against the fence, you know right where that blade's going to cut. So all I do is I put a square on here and try to eyeball where I want that to come out at to cut that off for your first cut, and I tighten this up. I mean, where's that going to go? Now after your first cut, you're going to want to remove these pieces of 2x4 with a V in it, and you just lay your flat edge on the plywood and lower this down and make your second cut. As soon as you get your second cut where you have a flat on the bottom and a flat on the side, then you can just start sliding across your fence and you don't even need this plywood. But let's throw it up there and try it out and see what happens. Okay, we got this thing set up, I think. Let's turn on the dust collector. I don't think I'm going to make this whole cut online. I mean, you guys seen saws work before, but let's see how well this does work. That's cutting a lot better than I thought it was gonna. With the exception of my clamps in the way, I gotta raise this guide up a little higher. Might as well finish this one. And in case you haven't noticed, this is red cedar. We'll put this on the bench and flip it over. Now, like I said, we're just going to loosen this up. We'll take the V's out. Put the flat side down. And to see where I want to cut this at. Now I'm going to adjust this clamp and I'll be right back. Okay, we about got it tight. It ain't going nowheres. Let's flip it around, throw it on the saw. Okay, we'll make our second cut. Little red showing on that piece. Now let me switch this around and just start using the fence. Alright, let's cut off one more board and we'll see how this works. You want to keep your guides as close as you can to your material. All there is to it, I've got the fence set at a little more than a ½ inch away from the blade. I had to take the fence and put it on the other side of the blade. Now I can just keep passing them off and I'll keep getting boards about between a ½ inch and 9/16. That'll give me enough material to run through the thickness sander and I have some nice looking boards. Let me cut a couple more. Now we're getting into some of that beautiful red wood. My father-in-law lives next door and he's got a 10-acre square, and along two sides of his property is the road, and one side where the power lines are, he had these trees planted about every 1.5 feet all the way down his property line. Consumers came in last year and decided they were going to trim for the trees, and they cut all these trees down. Well, I dragged all the logs home and I'm going to cut them up into boards and start making maybe small hope chests and jewelry boxes out of them. I hope you found this helpful or maybe a little entertaining. One thing I want to mention on the back of the saw where I put that bearing is you want to get this blade just as tight as you can. And they make another spring that go in these saws. I believe they're either red or blue, and they'll give you a lot more tension. But if you're going to use one of them heavier springs, I really suggest you make one of these cups and put them bearings back there, or I think you're going to have trouble with that rod bending on you. I guess I'm going to saw up some more wood, and I'm going to let you go. If you need any help, if you've seen something here and you need a little more information, maybe on the brace or the table extension, drop me an email or put a note at the bottom of the video. If you like these videos, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. I could use all the subscribers and likes that I can get a hold of. It's JNR Woodworking 2, the number 2, at gmail.com, or Jim's Fix It Shop at gmail.com. That's a little shorter. You don't have to type so much. Drop me an email, ask me some questions. I'll be more than happy to help you out. And I guess until next time, keep them tools sharp, the shop dusty, and we'll talk to you soon.